I just went and saw Deadpool and Wolverine, and I gotta say, this movie was a slog. This movie has problems of its own, and then problems that have been created by the bigger MCU. The problems the movie has on its own are mainly that it's repetitive. The shtick is played out. You know how every scene's gonna go. It's very formulaic. It's gonna be Ryan Reynolds going on a long soliloquy, making a reference about something. Pop music's gonna come in, and then maybe there'll be violence at the end. And a big problem for the movie is that it's just not funny. The violence is really uninteresting. There's really no stakes in the fights because both characters are immortal. They don't do anything super creative or fun or original. The problems this movie has created by the MCU primarily is that this movie feels like another generic MCU movie, except with cussing and violence. Story-wise, it feels like it. Some of the decisions feel like it. I'm curious to see if the anti-woke crowd actually calls out the shit that they do in this movie. Because if this wasn't a Deadpool movie, they'd be all over it calling it woke. The other MCU movies being so quippy and not serious and having these crazy stakes all takes away from this movie. Because that's kind of Deadpool's whole shtick in these movies, except he just does it more and he's more vulgar with it. I thought Hugh Jackman was the highlight of the movie. He was doing the most acting. He had the most emotional stuff. Obviously you get to see him be Wolverine again, which is always fun. And Ryan Reynolds, when he's just playing himself over and over, it wears on me. I like Ryan Reynolds either as a side character or if he's actually acting. Like he has quite a few movies where he's not just playing himself. And I like him much more in that. I'm not going to spoil any cameos or anything, but I will talk about the plot, if you want to call it that. It's very loose because I figure most people don't care about that anyway with the Deadpool movie. There'll be spoilers in that capacity if you actually care. I'm going to talk about the plot and sort of what didn't work for me and then kind of how this just falls into being another generic MCU movie. Financially, this movie will probably be fine, but the budget was massive. So even if it has a good box office, I doubt it's profitable. But let's just get into it. This movie falls in with the Loki and multiverse TVA stuff. The premise is that because Wolverine died in the Logan movie, that his universe is going to slowly deteriorate and die in like 2,000 years. This TVA guy is like, we need to go back to pruning the timelines, which I'll be honest, I don't understand any of the multiverse stuff or the dynamics of it. And I don't think anyone does or cares to. Deadpool gets pissed off, takes his phone, jumps around a bunch of universes till he finds a Wolverine that'll work with him. Obviously, he finds the one in the movie. They go back to the TVA and he's like, look, here's your Wolverine. Like, don't prune the universe that I came from. And this guy sends them both to the Void. So most of the movie takes place in the Void, which is just the dumpster of the multiverse or something. Why the TVA even needs that or has it or uses it instead of just some crazy advanced prison, I don't know. Whatever. And they had to find their way out of the Void. They want to stop this guy from pruning the timelines with his time ripper that he somehow made that the TVA also knows about. No clue why. They get pissed off at the guy for it and arrest him at the end. When they go to the Void, the bald chick, Cassandra Nova, which I guess is a play on Casanova, is running the Void. They have to fight her. She comes out to Deadpool's universe, and then she wants to destroy all the timelines because every Marvel movie has to have the stakes be literally infinite or it just wouldn't happen. And then they had to stop her at the end. That pretty much sums up the whole plot. There's really not much to it. In the movie, Wolverine is supposed to be the worst version of himself because he let all the X-Men die. So this is a redemption movie for him, a redemption movie for Deadpool because he needs to do something with his life. A really big problem this movie has is that it does the typical Marvel thing where even when they want to have a serious scene, they have to have comedy. So the only really serious scenes in the movie don't really feel like they matter. And especially in a movie like Deadpool, where it's just comedy nonstop, it really undercuts any kind of emotional tension. And you can tell they want people to be like, oh, these action scenes are awesome. These are so cool. Like they do the slow motion and the rap music and they all line up in the superhero formation. They want the shit to be cool. But because you don't really give a fuck about these characters, it doesn't really mean much. And then they're also immortal on top of that. Even Wolverine in this movie, he just kind of alludes to his background. And that's sort of it. And then eventually he describes it in like a 2-sentence exposition thing with X-23. And that's what we get. And then the stakes obviously are just incomprehensible. Again, we're destroying the entire universe of multiverse of universes for infinity all time. No one gives a shit. And my theater was pretty full. And there was some like chuckling and stuff. But there's only one or two like big laughs. For me, Deadpool 1 and 2 were okay. I definitely didn't like them as much as everyone else. But this one I thought was just bad. Like the story is just nothing. And when you have a story that's really relying on the comedy, because it's just joke, 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 and the jokes aren't landing, it makes the movie feel like forever long. But the movie's only 2 hours, and it felt like it lasted forever. It's kind of like if you ever watch a bad stand-up routine, and you're like, oh my God, how is this only a half an hour? But it just keeps going. And I chuckled a couple of times, and there's some nice Easter eggs in there that I recognized. I'm sure the hardcore comic people will have fun with all the Easter eggs and stuff. But these are the type of movies that I think are going to get a lot of praise when they initially come out, and then just kind of forgotten because there's just not much there. It's so weird. A lot of the movie is just Deadpool saying, oh, the audience wants to see this for a long time. And then they do it. They're like, oh, you finally put your uniform on after 20 years. And then he has it. It's like he's telling the audience, like, hey, this is what you wanted. And there's a lot of that in the movie. And it can work, but for me, it didn't. And then you get the typical thing where, you know, Ryan Reynolds is like, oh, you look like my ball sack after I sat on the beach for an entire day and sweated and it dripped down my groin and it smelled like pussy, or whatever fucking random shit he goes on. And then a pop song comes on, maybe some slow motion comes on, and you get like a generic fight scene. And I'm really curious to see what the anti-woke crowd says. The movie has all kinds of jokes, right? There's like a million jokes about gender in there, which I personally thought sounded like boomer humor. But he makes fun of all kinds of shit, right? But plot-wise, the villain is this bald lady who's a complete fucking lunatic and essentially a god in this void that she lives in. And at one point in the movie, they literally do fucking talk no jutsu so that she lets them get out of the void. It's crazy. Like, she is fucking batshit insane. We see her just pull someone's skin off. She keeps sticking her hand in people's heads to read their minds. She talks about killing a guy and wearing his skin for days. But then like they're nice to her, so she lets them go. And that's kind of what I'm talking about with the movie aspect, is like, it's just not very good. And then character-wise, we don't know shit about Logan except he's the worst one. And he refuses to talk about it at any point in the movie, even when Deadpool's being serious and like kind of asking. And then he meets X-23 for like 5 minutes. She sits down next to him. He just fucking cries his eyes out. Like, obviously the girl has to come pry the information out of him. And she's the one who inspires him to fight, blah, blah, blah. And then when they beat the bald bitch at the end, because she's a god, they don't even fight her. It's this total bullshit way that they kill her. I don't even know if it makes any sense, because they do the typical Marvel sci-fi gibberish, you know, stick the who's a what's it up your bamboozle and shove it up your ass and everybody wins. That's what I'm saying, is it feels like a generic Marvel movie with all the bad Marvel aspects, except with cussing and violence. For me, that played itself out a whole movie ago. I'm over it. And then there's some things that they did I thought were weird. Like, he talks about the multiverse and how lame it is in the movie. And they have a chance with this Time Ripper thing to essentially get rid of all the multiverses and just keep one. But they don't fucking do it because they're just committed to it. And then the movie starts off with him digging up Logan's corpse from the movie Logan and like killing guys with his adamantium bones. That's the scene you've seen in the trailer. It's just kind of weird that he's desecrating Logan's corpse from probably one of people's favorite movies with him. Definitely his favorite solo movie, or whatever you want to say. Just a strange choice there. There's actually not that much action. I'm not sure what the reason for this is, but most of the action is just kind of these one-on-one fights. And it's like, yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine fighting each other. Neither one can die. All right. And it's not particularly funny after like 30 seconds. Maybe the people who've wanted to see that on screen will love it the whole time. But for me, I was like, okay, like this fight is way longer than it needs to be. I think the movie's going to do like 700 million. For me, Deadpool kind of has a floor of like 500, just because the people that love Deadpool like really love him. I also don't see it getting to 1 billion just because it's R-rated. And I don't know if people actually like this movie. I thought it was very middling. I'm curious to see what the word of mouth is after this weekend. I kind of wonder if this weekend will do very well. And if the word of mouth is what I think, I kind of wonder if we'll see a big drop off. But maybe I'm the outsider and everyone fucking loved it and would recommend it to everybody. I don't know. But I just wanted to put it out there. That was my prediction. So I want to stand by it at least, even if I end up being wrong. And I'm not going to keep going. It's really hard to talk about this kind of movie because you essentially have to go joke by joke, which I'm not going to do. And I certainly can't do from memory. I'll leave it there. If you've seen the movie, let me know what you think. Maybe you liked it a lot more than I did. I try to respond to all the comments that aren't just insulting me. Like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.